Hello, how are you, folks? This is the Doug Rice Show. I am Doug Rice. You heard what I said. That's what I do, baby. Yes, that's what I do. The Doug Rice Show, sponsored by Twidwear. Twidwear, skincare, sportswear, athletic gear, footwear, everywhere. Twid gear. Oh, yeah, baby, that's it. 4 o'clock straight up, 14th of November. I'm trying to give you Negroes something to remember. Listen, the studies that I review, the teachings I show you, it's only meant for all of us to improve, but also remember. We must never forget. All right? Because that is the reason yet that we still got to get this info. Jim Crow laws. That is what the topic will be about. Now, I hear you talking. I hear you thinking. I know you're probably saying, Lord, this is stinking thinking, but it's not. Anything they want to suppress, anything they don't want to redress, that's, to me, the best guess to, investigate that mess. Seriously. They're trying to keep this history, what happened, behind not closed doors, but behind closed minds. They don't want their children to learn about their history. And for me, that is an unsolved mystery because, how dare they? How dare they act as if all that happened at their direction did not happen? They don't want their children to have any connection. It did not happen. That leads to, of course, having no correction. It did not happen, right? No, it happened. What I do is I bring receipts. I want our own family to know. Their knowledge should be complete. They need to understand this too. A lot of this stuff happened so long ago, and I know the current circumstances don't give too many Negroes chances to get considerable glances these types of documents, and so I choose to let it be known. And we're going to start with this, Jim Crow laws. Now, look, this is a teacher's introduction. And the reason this is so important, let me give it a little rise there for your eyes there. Let me tell you why this is important. I know that some may say, good Lord, Doug, what are you doing? Well, let me tell you what they're doing in the schools. Okay? In the schools of Georgia, this is what they teach mid-school students. This is it. This is the curriculum, okay? And interestingly enough, the teacher's introduction isn't too tough to simply disseminate while it is not too late. You need to know about this history. You do. So I'm going to give it a whirl or two. And again, this comes from a teacher introduction. And I think it'll make sense after we get into it some. So like, subscribe, share. Thank you so much. Here we go. So teacher introduction. Jim Crow laws were any state or local laws that enforced or legalized racial segregation. These laws lasted for almost 100 years. From the post-Civil War era until around 1968. And their main purpose was to legalize the marginalization of African Americans. Now, very important you understand. This is not some history long ago in this land. This is from 1968 back. And I say this was, 3 years after I was born. They still had Jim Crow laws in this country. So just bear with me. I think you like where this goes. The laws get the name Jim Crow You'll like this. From a racist and insulting minstrel routine called Jump Jim Crow. Well, here you go, just so you know. The routine was performed in the 1830s by a white man named, of all things, Thomas Dartmouth Rice. Well, ain't that nice? Yeah, that's where that's at. All right, so darn it, and I forgot to stop that photo. I hate doing that when I do that because it's not supposed to go through that. All right, so relative, who knows? I mean, I have a slave name just like every other name that black people they call in this country have. So when I read this just a little bit through, I saw the name and it made me laugh. What can I say? Dartmouth, Thomas Dartmouth Rice. My goodness. His most famous act was Jump Jim Crow, in which Rice would paint his face black and do a song and dance that he claimed was inspired by a slave he once saw. Not one that he knew, but one he once saw. Interesting. He would also adorn a shabby dress that imitated how Rice and many white individuals of the time imagined the dress and demeanor of a Southern enslaved black person. So Rice put on a show. Well, there you go. All right. Rice's routine became a hit, and let's hope so. Rice's routine became a hit. And as his popularity grew, his stage name began to permeate the culture. Jumping Jim Crow, or simply Jim Crow, became a well-known derogatory term for African Americans. Well, who knew? To call someone Jim Crow wasn't just to point out his or her skin color. It was to reduce that person to the kind of caricature that Rice performed on stage. The South started passing laws after the Civil War that discriminated against newly freed African Americans. And the Separate Car Act of 1890 began a long period of segregation that claimed the notion of separate but equal, with Plessy v. Ferguson in 1896. By the time of the turn of the century, these separate but equal segregation laws had gained the nickname made famous by Rice. The popularity of blackface minstrels faded but never died, and they never did die. Remember yesterday's show? They still have blackface in Holland. And T.D. Rice is barely remembered. In fact, most people don't know his name, but everybody knows Jim Crow. All right, well, because I said so. All right, so we just got a little bit of a foundation of how Jim Crow took root in this nation. And can you believe all behind a guy named Rice? Man, that's so great. I just said it nice. But thank God his name was forgotten, associated with Jim Crow. But let's read the rest of this just so we know. Here we go, folks. Like, subscribe, share. Let's see what we get in here. 20th century saw states across the South strongly enforce Jim Crow laws. These segregation practices affected every aspect of daily life, becoming enforced in professional offices, building entrances, schools, hospitals, asylums, jails, cemeteries, residential homes or neighborhoods, buses, rail cars, restrooms, water fountains, cashier windows, and phone booths. Wow. They just never could run out of places they just didn't want Negro faces, right? All right, well, let's continue. All right, not only were these institutions and objects separated, but it was also often the case that those for the African American community were not as nice or maintained as well as those for the white community. It's also important to note that while Jim Crow was mainly focused on separating African Americans from whites, Jim Crow laws also segregated those of Asian, Hispanic, and Spanish descent as well. In fact, segregation became so intense in certain areas that it was not uncommon to see signposts or at city or town limits warning African Americans or other quote unquote colored races that they were not welcome there. Well, there it is right there. And today we still have towns that are sundowner towns. They still have towns that don't want Negroes around, and for them, well, for those types of clowns, they can just get on down, you know? Quite frankly, folks, let me tell you something. The general sentiment of this country is they do not want Negroes here. The general sentiment of this country is they don't want anyone here that does not reflect their white European ideology of what an American is. And they're very close to, I believe, enacting the kind of conduct and action that may bring them the kind of satisfaction they're looking for in a whites-only country, because that seems to be what they're aiming for. Now, you can call me crazy. I don't really care. I've had all kind of names thrown to me out there, but I see what I see and I say what I say because that's what I do. Okay? For the Lord's sake, if you don't understand Donald Trump literally discussing his being reinstated in the White House before the 2024 election, what that's about is him driving more than an insurrection. They want a race war, and they may even want a whole lot more. And what this view does is give us a view of what was and what may be still, because they're looking for a thrill. All right, I'll go that further, no further. Though most prominent in the South, the North was not immune to Jim Crow type laws. No, they were not. Let me take a pause. Some northern states required blacks to own property to vote. Schools and neighborhoods were segregated. Business displayed whites-only signs. All right? As oppressive as the Jim Crow era was, it was also a time when Black community members around the country stepped forward into leadership roles, so vigorously opposed said laws. Ida B. Wells was an African-American woman who refused to leave a train car designed or designated for whites only. In 1889, she became co-owner of the Memphis Free Speech and Headlight and used her position to take on school segregation and sexual harassment. Though a mob destroyed her newspaper and threatened her with death, forcing her to live in the North, she continued her efforts against Jim Crow and lynching. Well, what do you know? Let me tell you something. Without flinching, I'll tell you this. All that aim was a certain miss. You know, all the effort put into equalizing Negroes within the framework of this country goes no place, nowhere, ever. They don't like our face, never. And I can't even imagine Ida B. Wells and, you know, having her newspaper destroyed, her life threatened, having to move to live in the North where they still didn't like Negroes, of course, right? And she still continued against Jim Crow. Well, I mean, it's a wonder that she tried so, because it's still here. It's still in the air. It's still near. Shit, it's still right there. You know this. And it's just imaginative how much we've been able to miss. I mean, seriously, she wasted a lot of time. I tell you that. All right, let's on with it. All right, let's go. Charlotte Hawkins Brown became the first Black woman to create a Black school in North Carolina, and through her education work became a fierce and vocal opponent of Jim Crow laws. Joe Louis became the heavyweight boxing champion in 1937, and Jackie Robinson became the first African-American to join Major League Baseball on April 14th of 1947. We know how that turned out. We watched the movie. I mean, can you imagine? I know it wasn't groovy. That must have been something living in those days and experience caucasity in all of its ways. In the segregated United States, having a Black individual accomplish such astounding feats sent a message to white America about all that could be accomplished through equal opportunity. And let me tell you something, folks. That message has resonated in the minds of their kind for so long it can't unwind the notion on the optic potion that poured over their minds. And so now they are still inclined to be as Jim Crow as they can go. And everybody knows that's pretty damn low. This ain't gone nowhere. All these individuals have done is get old. Some of them so much they refuse to fold. I mean, you take a look at them just staring out to space sometimes, trying to look at their face sometimes. I mean, some of these senators, they need to go. It's a wonder they stick around. So, damn right. That's right. As long as I got a small crowd, I might as well just say what I want, get loud. All right. Despite their accomplishments, Charlotte Hawkins Brown, Jackie Robinson, and other individuals and communities that attempted to defy Jim Crow laws were often met with extreme violence or even death. Lynchings, race riots, and other physical abuse were a constant threat to the African American community and any in the white community who attempted to resist Jim Crow as well. You know, they did lose a few of their own. They did. They fell. The poverty of the Great Depression only deepened resentment with a rise in lynching. And after World War II, even black veterans returning home were met with violence. Well, that's kind of a nice little blasé way of saying that they found Negroes in uniforms and hung them from trees because that was the norm, right? I mean, it's real nice glossing over that. However, the post-World War II era also saw a rise in civil rights activism, which ushers in the decades-long civil rights bowel movement effort that eventually, Oh, you don't see bowel? Oh, I did. Okay. I added bowel movement. My apologies. My bad. Sorry. That eventually resulted in the removal of Jim Crow and a replacement of it with something else that we might know. Individuals like Martin Luther King, bought and sold by the socialists, problems he did bring. And decisions such as Brown versus Board of Education, you know, the one they're about to flip if they haven't already, that one. The Civil Rights Act, I think that's about to go, and that's that. The Voting Rights Act, gone too. The Fair Housing Act, that's also through. All of these that they used to have tore down the racist infrastructure, but nowhere near for good. You read that right there, as you should. Jim Crow is officially no longer enforced openly and out in the open, but underhanded subterfuge with just slight hints of a hidden activity, and that's that. But the United States is still striving toward full integration despite their resistance and absolute refusal to ever integrate fully, and adheres to anti-racism, which will never go away as long as white people exist in this country. All right, just give everybody a heads up. I wanted you to know there were 2 posts of the Doug Rice Show, and one of them I did delete, and the other one I may have felt compete, but that may have been the false one. So the one that I did delete was the one that should have stayed. So I may have gotten inadvertently played by my own system. I wish the folks were here because I sure miss them. But no worries, like, subscribe, and share. It's all right there, as you can see down there. And if maybe you 5 might give me a play and listen to the words I say. Also donate to the Doug Rice Show and show your support, just so I'll know. All right, let's continue this read and see if it's more that we need. All right, a teacher's note on this lesson. Now, let me kind of bring this full circle. This is a teacher's lesson. This is, a work lesson that teachers use to deliver the information to students. And I felt it was important that we peruse so that you understand what they're delivered, what they're given, and the life they're living in these classrooms. Watch the leeway and also the guided design through which they try to infuse the minds of youngsters about this time. All right, teacher's note on this lesson. This lesson hopes to encourage students to look at this time, pay attention, through the standards of the period, and to understand the revolution in segregation practices that took place during the late 19th century into the 20th century. You see the softened blow, the softened delivery, Just so you know, let's see. So this is a social studies Georgia standard of excellence, excuse me. And it's a gradient sheet which points to different lessons. There are lesson plans that teachers prepare usually every day, every evening, sometimes every week. And believe me, I've watched my parents, so I know of what I speak. And this would be the lesson you see grades 5 through 8. They try to get them before it's too late, but here's how it goes. Grade 5, this is what the teacher wants his children to know. Describe how life changed in America at the turn of the century. Describe U.S. involvement in World War I and post-World War I America. Describe the importance of key people, events, and developments between 1950 and 1975. Now that's grade 5. All right, so now let's move on to grade 6 through 8. So effectively, in my estimation, they're talking about grade 7 here, but let's just talk about 6 through 8. So in grade 6 through 8, they want to cite specific textual evidence to support analysis of primary and secondary sources. They then want to determine the central ideas or information of a primary or secondary source, provide an accurate summary of the source distinct from prior knowledge or opinion. So to provide an accurate summary of the source distinct and separate from prior knowledge or opinions. And that means they want to infuse a new idea into these child's minds. Let's read on and see what else we find. Identify aspects of a text that reveal an author's point of view or purpose. Distinguish among facts, opinion, and reasoned judgment in a text. Distinguish among fact, opinion, and reasoned judgment. That's very interesting how they wish to approach the young minds you send to school every day. Now, the final sections here in grade 8, they want them to analyze the impact of Reconstruction on Georgia. They can approach that from many different sides. The eventual key political, social, and economic changes that occurred in Georgia during the New South era. They want that evaluated. They also want them to identify legal, political, and social dimensions of Reconstruction and evaluate efforts to reform American society and politics in the progressive era. So for 8th graders from 6 through 8, from 5 through 8, very interesting the dynamic they want to initiate. You know, they want to infuse the news these children can use before it's too late and they lose. But it's all up to the teacher themselves, in my opinion, especially if they leave a gradient gray area that allows the teacher to, to kind of veer from the point. Some are able to slide in a little racism in a joint. You know what I'm saying? You've seen I know you know I'm not playing. These kids come home with horror stories. So the lesson objectives are: analyze what life would be like for African Americans during the era of Jim Crow. Wait, slow down. You want these children to analyze what life would be like for African Americans during the Jim Crow era. Interesting. To what point? To what purpose? How does that teach? But I don't know, maybe the point I'll reach. Understand the different stresses, sacrifices, and abuse endured by African Americans during this period. Understand the different stresses. Understand the different sacrifices and abuse endured by African Americans during this period. Okay. Interpret period photos from the late 19th and early 20th centuries, and then analyze a secondary document that portrays American life during the late 19th century. And they want this lesson to be one class period or 1 hour, and that can be modified to fit your class period length or lesson goals. So understand what the goal is when your children go into these places. And I don't know if the goal is for them to really get along with other faces. I don't know. Now, they go through a series of exercises for these children to go through. And I don't think it's necessary for you to see that. So I'm going to go forward a little bit and give you something to look at. And here we go. Hope you're prepared for the Doug Rice Show. Howdy. There you go. Just take that in, folks. Go ahead. Take it all in, and that's some Jim Crow. Now, I'm hoping this isn't my ancestor. I'm just joking. Here we go. This minstrel postrel depicts an enslaved or generalized black man as one who is happy and content. Let me give you all of that. Happy and content in his shabby clothes and physical livelihood separation from the well-dressed individuals in the background. This racist blackface image became one of the images that Jim Crow laws, that gave Jim Crow laws their name. Now, let's take a look at those folks in the back, and I want to know if those folks are black. I don't know. They don't look black to me. I don't know. They might be black, I see. I don't know. That's interesting, isn't it? So there's Jim Crow right there. There he is. There he is. Take it all in, folks. Yep, there it is. Okay. Now, next here, let me see, make sure. This is very interesting. I wanted to get to this because I thought it was interesting. This is a newspaper article that was taken out very, very long ago, 1915, just so you know, February 22nd, to the editor of the Times. And what this letter says, I'm not going to read it all. I'm just going to go through this because I'm not trying to stall. This article portrays the institution of Jim Crow as the best decision for African Americans. Let me let you see that. According to the author of that previous letter, any educated person would be able to see this, but the article neglects to mention how the cars and service given to African Americans were not the same as what was given to the white community. The mistreatment African Americans received as a result of Jim Crow was not a cause for pride, but instead sadness and a great desire to be equal and not rivals. Now, let me show you. It's a very short article. I mean, I could read it. I don't. But the colored race is no longer looked down on, and passing this Jim Crow law and giving them as good cars and services as is giving the white people, it will then give that race the opportunity to develop more racial pride and distinction. Let me say this carefully, okay? This backward, hillbilly, racist white male that wrote this drivel had the right idea couched in the wrong verbiage. It would have given Negroes all the pride, and he discussed in this article and thus, but you see, it's the white mind that can't stand to see our kind rise, and it's something like, I don't know, hot coals or something else that might be in their eyes, because they go crazy. And they go crazy. And Tulsa, Oklahoma is just a story that got out. The amount of other incidents, there are many, I've no doubt. There are entire Negro towns that were flourishing that are now lakes and bodies of water. So don't tell me all about what white folks do. They're nothing but full of slaughter. They try to couch the Jim Crow law meaningful to us as a people, but for them, it's a way to keep us separate from them while they maintain the status quo. All right, I wanted you to have an eye on that one, but look at the next one, just so you know. Same thing. Very few Negroes object to the Jim Crow laws when they are properly carried out. You see that? Very few Negroes, listen to me, folks, you're grinning and skinning and cheesing and greasing in these folks' face every day, appeasing, and you're not even realizing. Because ain't this shit surprising? Come on now. This is something they wrote in a news article. Okay? Moreover, the people of the North who will not let Negroes earn an honest living as laborers may not object now to riding in the same seats with them in railroad cars, but give the North the same proportion of Negroes in the population, they will howl for Jim Crow laws. These people are inherently hateful against Negroes because of who they are and what they represent. I'll say that all day, twice on Sunday, and even the weekends I won't relent. So in this article, the one we just passed, It mentions how African Americans actually like Jim Crow, if the laws are properly carried out, as I read. However, the laws were not properly carried out, nor were they accepted. The author states how the white community, they prefer to believe that he, the African American, is perfectly satisfied with the separation and segregation. In reality, the author has neglected to research the harsh factual realities of Jim Crow instead of his beliefs. You see, they paint this picture of good treatment under horrific conditions. It's just it's a matter of what you'll take. Here's a Greyhound bus trip from Louisville, Kentucky to Memphis, Tennessee, and the terminal signs, the sign at the bus station. What's that say? You think that didn't exist? They don't want you to see this. This is an example of the image of separation that was enforced at bus stations and other aspects of life. Similar to the sign in the exhibit, these segregation practices were very invasive into the everyday aspects of life for African Americans. This sentiment has gone nowhere. If they could have it this way, they would have it this way, folks. I need you to know that. Here's this one. Negro drinking at colored water cooler in streetcar terminal in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. In this image, take a close look. Don't look away. In this image, one can see the bathroom signs, which indicate the direction men and women of both races should go to find their designated restrooms, because they don't want to pee next to you. You hear me? They surely do. Additionally, the central focus of the image depicts an African-American individual taking a drink from the water cooler designated specifically for colored people. Most likely, there would have been a legitimate water fountain designated for whites, either on the other side of the petition or in a more preferable location away from the restroom. Okay, so, this wasn't long ago, folks. This is still part of the show, folks. This is all so you know, folks. Here we go. The cafe near the tobacco market in Durham, North Carolina. Here we go. The separate entrances for white and colored people had to be observed and strictly followed during the Jim Crow era. Yep. Behind those segregated entrances, one of two scenarios would be presented. Separate seating sections for whites and colored people, or a separate counter for African Americans and to order at, and then a seating area for white individuals to dine in for their meal. You still want to stay here? Is that how you feel? Is this your country? Is that how you feel? I mean, I really need to ask that question. You ready to kneel? Because that's what it feels like. I don't know. Next, disturbing pictures of American life under Jim Crow. This truly happened, so Negroes know. This sign demonstrates the desire of certain communities not to have just separate entrances or waiting rooms, but a completely racially segregated neighborhood. That's what they want. That's what they still want. They want a completely racially segregated country at this point. That's what they are signaling, okay? This was not uncommon in the United States during the Jim Crow era. Some towns were called sundowner towns, some still are. And they would not allow African Americans in the town after dark, some still don't. These white communities also feel that their desires and beliefs are patriotic or true American beliefs, as can be represented by their flag. So if you don't understand that they associate that flag with white supremacy, take a look at the picture. Take a look at the photo. It's obvious. They're still thinking about this. They still think this. Look at this. Just for flair, we serve whites only, no Spanish or Mexican. So what do you think they do when a Negro walk in? This sign addresses how Jim Crow affected it and limited to not just African Americans, only that's where it starts, stays, and hovers. And if I might say before we continue, the Spanish and Hispanic community in the United States right now is wholeheartedly supporting the GOP and Donald Trump. So don't give me that bullshit. Okay, so signs like this one, this undated image, were displayed at various restaurants and other public accommodations under a system known as Juan Crow laws, addressing those of Spanish descent who were subject to Jim Crow. So you called it Juan Crow? Huh? Juan Crow, is that how this goes? Juan Crow law. Okay. So, look, folks, this is the time that we live in. It's a time that's reflected the time that was lived in. And those people living then are still here exercising their sin. It's very subtle. And it's getting more pronounced. I mean, it won't be long now before Nazism is announced. I mean, I'm serious. I should have said pronounced. I apologize. All right, that was good. I did enjoy that. Now, Booker T. Washington did write a letter to the editor of a newspaper in 1885. It's an interesting letter, and I think I'm going to read it because I think I just want to keep the show alive. So let's try this out. This is the Booker T. Washington letter to the editor of the Montgomery Advisor in Tuskegee, Alabama. Dear God, April 24th, 1885, when it was certainly exciting for a Negro to be alive. Oh, yeah. I wish to say a few words from a purely business standpoint. It's not a subject with which to mix social equality or anything bordering on it. To the Negro, it is a matter of dollars and cents. I claim that the railroads in Alabama do not provide as good accommodations for the colored passengers as those furnished white passengers for the same money, and that the fare is not first class as claimed on the face of the ticket. Again, a letter from Booker T. Washington to the editor of the Montgomery Advisor, Tuskegee, Alabama, April 24th, 1885. My reasons for the above assertions are A, that in most cases, the smoking car and that in which colored people are put are the same. When not put directly into the smoking car, they are crammed into one end of a smoking car with a door between them is as much open as closed, making little difference between this and the smoking car. On some of the roads, the colored passengers are carried in one end of the baggage car, there being a partition between this and the baggage or express. Only a half coach is given to the colored people, and this is almost invariably an old one with a low ceiling. And it soon becomes crowded almost to suffocation and is misery to one knowing the effects of impure air. The seats in the coach given to colored people are always greatly inferior to those given to the whites. The car is usually very filthy. There is no carpet, as in the first class coach. When a man gets drunk or wants to lounge around in an indecent position, he finds his way into the colored department. If railroad officials do not let us enter the first class car occupied by white passengers, let them give us a separate one, just as good in every particular and just as exclusive, and there will be no complaint. We have no desire to mix. We have no desire to mix. There's no disposition on the part of the colored to obtrude themselves on the whites when they can receive equal, separate accommodation. We can be as separate as fingers, yet one as the hand for maintaining the right. Now, this letter is also included in the Plessy v. Ferguson lesson plan. It addresses forthright the unequal accommodations that were provided to African Americans even as early as 1885 compared to those offered to the white community. All those separation practices enforced and the images shown can be given a new perspective. The knowledge provided by Booker T. Washington in regards to the inequality shown under Jim Crow. Let me tell you something, folks, just so you know. Booker had an idea. Yes, he did. Yep, he had my ear. Yes, he did. We have no desire to mix. What happened? What happened, Negro? When did we stop looking for the exits? And are we looking now? I hope so, because we're going to find a few exits somehow. We're almost out of here, Negroes, and what I do is remind you why we need to leave. And let me tell you something, a little thought I did perceive. When it's time to go, and I mean when it's time to go, so many will remain just so. So many of you are just going to stay right here. You're going to talk about blood and sweat and tears. You're going to talk about your ancestors dying right here. You're going to do all that dumbness. But the Creator wants Negroes as a oneness. So when it is time to go, don't dally. Just go. Hit down the alley. All right, we're out, folks. That's a good show. I like that, and it's important. Like, subscribe, share. We are brought by Twidware. Twidware, you got to say it. I say it. That's what I do. You understand that, right? I'm known for just saying it. I have to say it. So many don't say it. So many are hesitant to speak truth. But if you do it without trying to be respectable, I don't know, you might just hit the roof. All right, folks, that's about it. We're done here. We're done. You folks have a great one, a great one. My name again is Doug Rice. Thank you so much for showing up. I'm on the way to being a star. No, I'm not. I'm just trying to get the word out. You guys have a shout. Hey, again, Doug Rice brought to you by Twidware. I am Doug Rice, and I am out of here. Hey, do me a favor, would you? If you got to be out there in those public places, you know I say it always, get that goddamn grin off your faces. You heard me say it, because that's what I do. I'm trying to outro. It's just a thing, you know. You get lost in the shuffle. It's a thing. Just leave. All right, folks. See you. Bye-bye.